goes
Right.
off, someone's injured accidentally if the gun misfires somehow. What happens? Do you sue the school system? Do you is the state going to be responsible? Is the school system going to be responsible? Can you sue their teacher personally? What? I mean, who? I can't imagine a teacher would want that responsibility on top of everything else that's going on as well.
I agree. Um, not only that, not only that, but I mean, you're talking about going back to your point of oh, I'm losing my train of thought just like that. It's like these thoughts just run through my head.
See, that's why
Um,
you're not a teacher right now. See,
facts. But bottom line is I agree. I just think that this is kind of a territory that they should leave up to the professionals. This is,
true. Agreed.
it's a little crazy, but it's about that time for a break. So let's get into a break, and then we'll continue this conversation when we get back from the break. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right.
You're listening to Straight No Chaser. We'll be right back.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in physics, I learned that I'm a loser.
Today in school, I learned that I'm ugly and useless. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. In history, I learned that I'm trash.
Today in school, I learned that I have no friends.
In biology,
In English, I learned that I make people sick. And at lunch, I learned that I sit on my own because I smell. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes
In
me.
biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. And in math, I learned that I'm trash.
The only thing I didn't learn in school today,
The only thing I didn't learn today
the only thing I didn't learn
Is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
The path to happiness is not the easy one, but taking drugs will not make it easier. Many people got lost and end up losing their life to drugs. If you or anyone that you know is within that path, don't be afraid to seek for help. Visit www.adk.gov.my for information related to drug abuse. So, know your path. This message is brought to you by the National Anti-Drugs Agency.
Where I wanted to quit, in the back of my mind, I told myself, I have to quit. And just that day, when I reached for that cigarette, I'll never forget it, with my son looking at me. And it was like a bolt of lightning hit me, where I finally realized the big picture of what year after year and cigarette after cigarette had done. And I said, that's it. I'm done. I quit. Took him a whole pack, brand new pack. Took him, threw him out the window, and I don't litter. But that's it. I'm done. I quit. It's going to kill me. It's going to be cancer. But I don't have to make it sooner than it needs to be. He was shocked, and he says, I really hope you mean that, Mom.
You're listening to Straight No Chaser. So let's get back to your girl MBZ, Pastor C, Thin Bad, and the Chief.
Hello, hello, hello. We are back from break, folks. Hope you are doing well. Took care of everything that you had to take care of while we were on break, but we're back at you talking about school violence or, the threat of school violence and the impact that can have on any campus. We've seen enough tragedy from kindergarten and elementary school straight on up through college. The suspects don't, well, until I heard recently in the Nevada area, they didn't discriminate, but they had some people who were thinking about discriminating on some things. But by and large, these are just people who come in and kill or injure everybody within their sight. Suspects are driven by, rage, revenge, mental illness of any type, desperation or something, whatever it is. The results are tragic, and the scars go on forever. We've got, in many states, you've got bills probably being discussed in legislatures all across this country to introduce the idea of arming teachers. And while it's not brand new, because they've been talking about it for a few years, each year it has to get beat back a little bit more and a little bit more. But believe it or not, there's states that don't, there's some states that don't have anything on the law. I think there are about 8 states that either, in the United States, obviously, there are about 8 states, Alabama, Alaska, Hawaii, New Hampshire, Oregon, Rhode Island, Utah, Wyoming, that either allow concealed weapons permit holders to carry guns at K through 12 schools or have no law at all addressing the subject. And that's a stark reality. But we're trying to beat back those kind of situations wherever we can, because we just don't think that, police are trained for that kind of thing. And even with their training, Chief, you can attest to that mistakes are made. Sometimes you have people who aren't of the right, their psychological profile isn't up to speed. So you can imagine, what happened with teachers who went to school and did everything they did, to learn how to teach elementary education or high, adult education or whatever education, but nowhere in that is there a handgun course, nor should there be. But, they've got active shooter drills, kids in some places are practicing, lockdown, and because it's a very real possibility that kind of thing can happen. As I was saying earlier, you can go out, you see your child off to school and you just hope and pray that they come back without having to have, God forbid, being a victim of this or having to even been a witness of anything like that. We're finding now that there are folks who are, years later, suffering from survival guilt and things like that and committing suicide, adding further insult to injury on the whole situation. These injuries go on, far beyond the actual incident. But the violence has a terrible impact on the community, not only the school community, but just the community that the school sits in and beyond that. And normally there's some warning signs. So let's kind of talk about, if we can, like why it happens. What do we think? When is it? Are there signs that are missed? Parents and friends or teachers, are we missing warning signs? I'd have to think so. The gentleman we talked about before, who was looking at singling out African American students. Now, while letting everyone know that there was no shooting associated with this, the fact that there was a plan or a thought on this level makes you wonder, like, okay, well, what's going on, and what were the were there any signs that were missed? Did we see anything that should have tipped us off? And then even if you saw something like that, by the time they get to the school, is adding another school, is arming everyone, is turning everything into the wild, wild west the way to go? That everybody's got to have their guns. You know what? So how about this? How about this, Chief? Let everybody have the guns. Everybody can have a gun, but what we're going to do is we're going to outlaw bullets. How about that? We could do that. So if you want your gun so bad, you can have all the guns you want, but you ain't getting no bullets. So how about that? What's the NRA got to say about that? They're for protecting the right to have guns. we can have the guns. Then you can have guns, but no bullets.
No, you know they ain't gonna go for that.
I thought we tried. I mean, it's just worth a try. I mean,
Okay.
some of the laws that they're proposing are just as ridiculous. I'm trying to read over the little one. It's only a 1-page, well, 2-page thing that they're trying to promote here in North Carolina. But I'm looking at some of the, they talk about they could use violence. They have to define what violence is. Violence means physical injury that a reasonable person would conclude could lead to permanent injury or death. Well, that just seems so subjective.
I was about to say that's a very vague definition.
Right. That's like so that's relative. So what may be threatening to you, may not be threatening to me.
Right.
It's
kind of like stand your ground laws in Florida.
Right.
It's like, okay, we're gonna need to have some amendments to this. We need to. I mean, it's like you need to be a little bit more specific.
Right.
Well, but the reasonable standard is not uncommon. Because, for example, even when you look at, for example, stopping people and frisking them, there's a standard that with this activity that you just observed, where a reasonable person that a crime occurred or was about to occur. So the reasonable standard is not uncommon, but that same language about reasonable gets right back to what I was saying in terms of when you're training people to deal with trauma and emergencies. One of the things that you're looking at is, okay, based on what we found in your background, and when you combine that with the months and months and hours of training that we gave you, we think that based on the training that we've given you, the fact that we think that you have a stable psychological background, we think that you will be able to make reasonable decisions under different types of circumstances. So that reasonable standard is there, which is why I keep saying that, you got to be very careful just allowing anyone in the school with guns with the sole purpose of being another barrier in terms of protection. Now, let me again make this very clear. Now, I'm not saying that if I happen to be a permit holder, I'm an off-duty police officer, or I am some other person that's allowed to carry a gun, and I happen to be in the area, and for example, I have a concealed carry permit. I live in Utah, and I just happen to be there visiting my kids' school for PTA, and all hell breaking loose. That's certainly the situation where a reasonable person, I got a firearm on my hip, that all hell breaking loose. Let me see how I can be of some assistance. Now, in that situation, of course, the problem that person may have, if you go and try to take action at that point in time, the good guys don't know who's who. Right. So you may have a situation that's around from friendly fire. You know what I mean? But certainly your intention is, okay, I hear something going on. A reasonable person would say, okay, let me see what I can do to save some lives here. And that's not, and no one would fault you for that. But again, I just say that there's so many hours, hundreds of hours go into training people, law enforcement personnel across the country to make split-second decisions under some very, very stressful situations, which is why they role play, they do shoot, don't shoot, they do a lot of different things to make sure, to the extent that they can, police chiefs across the country, that when I give Ambini this weapon and this badge and this gun, that I've given her every possible opportunity to learn, make mistakes, have a judgment, question, all kinds of things, to see how she's going to operate under stress. You're not going to have that same opportunity with Miss Smith, who is the third period algebra teacher. Now, Miss Smith may be a former Green Beret and all this other kind of stuff. That's